Okay, let's dive in. Welcome back, everyone, to the deep dive. Today, we are focusing on someone you almost certainly recognize, maybe from multiple places, actually. We're talking about Elizabeth Jean Busy Phillips. You might know her as Kim Kelly from Freaks and Geeks, that unforgettable rebel. Or maybe Lori Keller from Cougar Town. Totally different vibe, right? Bubbly, kind of out there. But the thing is, her career path, it's turned out to be way more complex, more versatile, and honestly, probably more impactful in the public conversation than just those famous TV roles.
That's exactly right. We're definitely going beyond just, the character summaries today. We've got this really rich stack of sources, biographical details, career milestones, personal stuff. And our goal here is really to trace how she went from being this actress in cult classics and network shows to becoming an author, a late-night host, and now this really prominent, pretty fearless public voice.
Yeah, an advocate.
Exactly. It's like we're examining how this very distinct personality, energetic, candid, vulnerable, how that thread has run through and sometimes completely reshaped pretty much every single professional step she's taken.
And what's so interesting looking at the sources is tracing that personality, that candor, right back to the beginning. It wasn't something that just suddenly appeared when she decided to write a book. It seems like it was always there, influencing everything from, believe it or not, how she got her nickname to who she met early on. So let's start with those basics, but then get right into some of those really specific nuggets the sources offer about her early life.
Okay, fundamentals first. And yeah, the name's always the first question, isn't it? She was born Elizabeth Jean Phillips, June 25, 1979, Oak Park, Illinois, that's near Chicago, but raised mostly in Scottsdale, Arizona. But like you said, Elizabeth Jean, it's almost like purely academic for anyone who knows her public persona. It's just
always busy. And the story behind Busy, it's actually a little bit contested in the early accounts, which is kind of a neat way to start thinking about how narratives form around public figures. Some sources initially suggested, maybe her parents called her that because she was super active as a kid. Others pointed to a babysitter named Susie. And why does this tiny detail even matter? Well, maybe because it shows this little bit of, ambiguity around her identity right from the start, something she later takes real control over, clarifying.
Precisely. And we can actually settle this name game based on her own words. The sources confirm she went on the Comedy Bang Bang podcast. And Scott Aukerman asked her point blank. She said, nope, it was definitely the babysitter. And think about that for a sec. It's a small thing, but it means she spent her life kind of owning and explaining this label someone else gave her, which is, interestingly, kind of a pattern we see later when she tries to frame the narrative around her book, right?
That's a great point. Okay, so sticking with early life, there are some amazing pre-fame stories that sound almost, too good to be true, like Hollywood script moments. Apparently, while she was still in high school, she had this job working toy trade fairs as a real-life Barbie, embodying the brand.
Yeah, totally performative work. And get this, the sources add that her sister was there too, playing cool teen skipper alongside her.
No way. That's fantastic.
Pure gold, right. But the really, almost defining anecdote from that time involves a huge star, Sharon Stone. Stone apparently saw Phillips at one of these toy conventions, was genuinely struck by her, her presence or performance, and straight up told her she was going to be a star.
Wow, imagine hearing that as a teenager working a trade show. That's not just a fun story. That's career rocket fuel, psychologically speaking, something you definitely hold on to during those tough early audition years. But then college provided more tangible connections, right?
Absolutely critical connection. She went to Loyola Marymount University, LMU, and you really can't overstate how important this was. It basically plugged her right into her initial professional network. Her classmates there included Linda Cardellini,
who she'd end up working with multiple times.
Exactly. First on Freaks and Geeks, then later on ER. And also Colin Hanks. The sources mentioned she actually dated Hanks for several years after they finished school. So LMU wasn't just, college buddies. It put her right in the orbit of that whole, emerging Judd Apatow comedy world.
Which leads us right to it. The project that, even though it was so short-lived, feels totally foundational for a whole generation, Freaks and Geeks, 1999 to 2000.
Her first really major role, Kim Kelly. And we should probably talk for a second about why that show became such a cult classic. It wasn't some huge ratings hit when it aired. NBC didn't quite know what to do with it, canceled after one season. But its genius and why it lasted was that raw realism. It just refused to sugarcoat being a teenager. That was pretty revolutionary for TV back then.
Completely. And the sources really highlight her commitment to it, even though it was brief. She was so key to the kind of chaotic energy of the Freaks side of the show appeared in every single episode except one. Just 1 out of 18. The one she missed was Chokin' and Token, which fans know, but yeah, she was basically a constant presence. That role immediately established her as this really dynamic ensemble player who could handle the drama but also nail those sharp, funny lines.
That show really was a launchpad, wasn't it? For so many actors, writers, directors, incredible roster. And around the same time as Freaks and Geeks, she actually made her film debut, too, in a 2000 comedy called The Smokers. But yeah, you're right. Television was clearly where she was building that early reputation for being versatile, dependable.
Okay, so phase 2. This required a pretty interesting shift, right? Going from something like Freaks and Geeks, which was edgy, low budget, critically adored, but niche, to stepping into the much glossier, more established world of a big network teen drama.
Yeah, that move came in 2001. She gets cast in Dawson's Creek as Audrey Liddell. Big hit show. And it was a smart move, career-wise. She came in as a recurring character in season 5, which was the college years for that group. But she clearly made an impression because she got bumped up to a main role for season 6. Audrey was kind of the new, slightly wilder, funnier roommate for the core characters, and that role really played to her strength, that mix of vulnerability, sharp humor, and, yeah, bit of chaos that Phillips just does so well.
And you can see from the source material, she was definitely hustling during this period, kind of cementing her place in that whole teen young adult TV world. Even before Dawson's Creek fully hit for her, she was doing key guest spots like Malcolm in the Middle in 2000. And importantly, she popped up in Judd Apatow's next show, the college comedy Undeclared, in 2002. Even though that was short-lived too, it shows she was keeping those Apatow connections going while landing the Steady Network gig.
Then comes what you might call the sort of network hustle phase. After Dawson's Creek wrapped up, she landed some pretty memorable supporting roles in movies. We absolutely have to mention Karen Guggelstein in White Chicks in 2004.
Oh, yeah, I can't skip that one.
Right. I mean, whatever you think of the movie critically, it was a huge box office success. And it showed she could absolutely handle broad physical comedy. Proved she wasn't just, the indie darling or the teen drama actress.
And she was clearly aiming for that stability of a network sitcom. She landed a show called Love, Inc. on UPN, ran 2005 to 2006. And the sources point out something kind of interesting about the industry context there. The role she got was apparently first meant for Shannon Doherty.
Which tells you something about the kind of maybe name or type the network was looking for, and that Phillips was now being seen in that league. But unfortunately for her, Love, Inc. only lasted 1 season. Just shows you how tough that network sitcom game can be.
So volatile.
But she bounced back. The next big move was actually a sharp turn back towards drama, wasn't it?
ER.
Yeah, really substantial recurring role on ER, Dr. Hope Bobeck. She was in 19 episodes between 2006 and 2007. This was definitely a return to, prestige drama. Big established hit. And maybe just as importantly for her personally, it reunited her with Linda Cardellini again. Her old LMU and Freaks co-star was a main cast member on ER by then.
Okay, let's pause on ER for a second, though, because the way her character exited the show, the sources detail it, and it's really unusual, especially for a gritty medical drama like that.
It is pretty jarring, yeah. The sources are specific. Dr. Hope Bobeck gets written out because she's heading off to South America to fulfill her Christian mission.
Right. In the middle of working at County General in Chicago, it feels super abrupt, almost oddly specific and maybe a little convenient for the writers. It maybe suggests they weren't sure what to do with the character long term, or perhaps, like you hinted, maybe she was already looking for something that better suited her comedic side again.
Could be. And that opportunity definitely came calling, thanks to Bill Lawrence and Courtney Cox. So we fast forward just a bit, and we get to what ended up being her longest-running show, and arguably the role that brought her the most critical praise. Lori Keller on Cougar Town. Ran from 2009 to 2015, first on ABC, then TBS. This was a huge turning point.
Yeah, this feels like where everything kind of clicked into place for her on screen.
Totally. Lori Keller felt like a role tailor-made for Phillips's specific energy, that zany, often improvised feeling vibe. The show itself, people kind of dismissed it early on because of the title.
Which they later mocked themselves.
Exactly. But it quickly found this really unique, quirky ensemble rhythm. And a huge part of that was the chemistry between her and Courtney Cox.
Yeah.
Lori was the perfect, comedic engine, quick wit, bizarre catchphrases, always optimistic.
And this role finally brought that real tangible industry recognition that, cult hits or shows that only last a season can't quite deliver.
Precisely. This was the game changer in terms of awards and critical acclaim. In 2011, she won the Critics' Choice Television Award for Best Supporting Actress in a Comedy Series for playing Laurie. She had also won an EWE Award from Entertainment Weekly the year before, 2010, for the same part. That kind of recognition, it really shifts your status in the industry. She went from being seen as a really reliable, funny supporting player to like an award-winning essential comedic talent. It definitely gave her more clout.
And speaking of having more input or creative ambition, the sources remind us she wasn't just acting even back then. We should definitely note she got a co-story credit on the 2007 Will Ferrell comedy Blades of Glory.
Yeah, that's important. It shows that interest in the writing side, the story construction, was there pretty early on, way before the memoir came out. Connects her to the creation process. And she was clearly incredibly resilient personally during this time, too, juggling huge life stuff with work demands. There's this pretty remarkable anecdote she shared herself. I think it was on Chelsea Lately back in 2010. She talked about auditioning for a role on Glee. Think about how huge and demanding Glee was just 1 week after giving birth. And she mentioned she'd gained about 80 pounds during that pregnancy.
Wow, 1 week later. Auditioning for Glee, that takes incredible grit, drive. Jumping back into that intense audition pressure cooker, especially for something so physically demanding like a musical, so soon after having a baby, that says a lot about her work ethic and maybe the pressure to keep that career momentum going.
For sure. And we see that versatility, that drive continue right through the 2010s. She kept seeking out really interesting, often ensemble-based, high-quality TV projects. She did HBO's Vice Principals with Danny McBride from 2016 to 2017. That had a real dark edge. She popped up as Sheba Goodman in Tina Fey's Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt for a couple episodes, 2018, 2019. Pure absurdity there. And she was also in the HBO series Camping in 2018, another one of those high-profile, slightly uncomfortable ensemble comedies.
Yeah, all those roles, from the kind of dark comedy of Vice Principals to the outright silliness of Kimmy Schmidt, they really paved the way for her next big ongoing role, didn't they, in Girls Five
Girls Five, yeah, playing Summer Dukowski. That show feels like it really pulls together a lot of threads from her later career. It's got the sharp comedy, but also lets her sing, which we saw glimpses of way back in Dawson's Creek and Cougar Town. The show ran from 2021 to 2024. And here's another example of that resilience we keep talking about, but on an industry level this time. The show originally aired on Peacock, but then for its third season, it moved to Netflix. That's a huge save for a show, right? Moving from one streamer to an even bigger one after being dropped, it suggests the team, including Phillips, really kept the quality high and managed to find that new, larger home for it.
That's a major win. And looking even more recently, she's still landing these roles that feel kind of iconic, tying back to that teen media history. The sources confirm she was cast as Regina George's mom in the 2024 movie version of the Mean Girls musical.
Which is just perfect casting, isn't it? It nods to her comedy chops, obviously, but also feels like a fun callback to her whole history in those seminal high school stories, from Freaks and Geeks right up through Dawson's Creek.
Totally. Okay, so that brings us to a really significant shift. We've tracked her acting career, the evolution there, but then comes the moment where Elizabeth Shawn Phillips, the person, steps fully into the spotlight, taking direct control of her own story.
Yeah, this is the pivot. And the clear starting point for that is her memoir, This Will Only Hurt a Little, came out in October 2018.
And writing a memoir, it's inherently an act of, like, defining yourself for the public, right? You're choosing what stories to tell, how to frame them. But almost as soon as it was released, the media coverage just zeroed in on one specific story. That anecdote about a physical altercation she described having with James Franco on the set of Freaks and Geeks, that became the headline everywhere.
It really did dominate the initial press cycle. And this is a really important moment for understanding how she navigates the media and her own narrative. The focus was all on the gossip, the conflict, the sort of he said, she said potential. But the sources show Phillips pushing back on that pretty quickly. She said publicly she was bummed that everyone was focusing only on the Franco incident. She made it clear her intention was much bigger than just settling an old score.
Right. She specifically said she included that story to illustrate a larger point about the way women are treated in this business and in life. That framing is absolutely key. She took this really shocking personal experience and explicitly used it not just as, like, celebrity tea, but to talk about systemic issues, gender dynamics, professional mistreatment in Hollywood. It's a real early, clear sign of that activist mindset emerging publicly.
And that instinct leveraging a personal story for a broader critique happened right before she jumped into maybe the riskiest venture yet, late-night television. She became the host of her own show, Busy Tonight, on the E! Network. It ran from October 2018 to May 2019.
Busy Tonight felt really different from the jump, didn't it? It was clearly trying to carve out a unique space in that very male-dominated late-night world, much more conversational, felt more intimate, very topical, definitely aimed at a female audience. It felt like you were just, hanging out, chatting with her and her guests. It was a big swing for E, definitely relying more on her established personality, her candor, than on, say, the big political jokes or the huge celebrity booking wars of the network shows.
And it was a swing that got cut short.
Huh.
And the timing, the circumstances around the cancellation, they just perfectly capture that tension between critical validation and the harsh realities of cable TV ratings. The sources confirmed this almost unbelievable irony. The show was officially canceled on May 16, 2019.
Right, and that exact same day, Phillips gets nominated for a 2019 Critics' Choice Award. Not for the talk show, but for her acting work. Talk about professional whiplash.
It's incredible timing. Public praise for her creative talent, landing literally hours after the corporate plug gets pulled on her hosting gig. It really highlights how tough it is to launch something non-traditional in that late-night space. Maybe E's expectations for ratings or the show's fit with their brand just didn't align with the buzz it was generating elsewhere. But sticking to our theme here, resilience. She didn't just disappear. She immediately took that authentic voice, that candid style, and moved it to a platform where she had total control. Podcasting.
Makes perfect sense. In August 2020, so just over a year after Busy Tonight ended, she launches Busy Phillips is Doing Her Best. And she brought along former writers from the E! Show, Casey St. Onge and Shantira Jackson. It felt like a really smart, strategic way to keep that conversation going, maintain the candor, touch on personal stuff, political stuff, but completely outside the pressures and, frankly, the overhead of a network TV studio.
Exactly. Full creative autonomy. And that focus on her voice, her perspective, seemed to be continuing. The sources mention her current TV series, Busy This Week, which started in 2024. It really shows this ongoing commitment to making her personality, her ability to connect and converse, the main event, not just something she does on the side of her acting.
Okay, so we've seen how her professional life increasingly involves sharing her personal life and views. Memoir, talk show, podcast.
Yeah.
It all hinges on that blend. So let's really dig into the personal life details provided in the sources because they become absolutely crucial context for understanding her activism.
Right. So the basics.
Yeah.
Married screenwriter Mark Silverstein, June 16, 2007. They have two children, Birdie Lee, born 2008, and Cricket Pearl, born 2013. And yeah, the names are definitely distinctive, mirroring her own unique name. The sources also note their separation, which happened privately in February 2021, but they announced it publicly in May 2022.
And crucially, these aren't just like facts dropped in a void. Her public persona is built on sharing this kind of reality, the ups and the downs. She also shared very openly that her older child, Birdie, is gay and uses they-them pronouns. That was a significant public statement. And then more recently, May 2024, she revealed publicly that she has ADHD. Each of these disclosures shows this consistent pattern, a willingness to share really personal, vulnerable truths about her family, about her own health, and in doing so, she contributes to these bigger public conversations, whether it's about LGBTQ+ identity or neurodivergence.
And that established history of candor, of sharing the personal, becomes the absolute bedrock for her most dramatic public turn, becoming this incredibly powerful advocate, especially around abortion rights and reproductive health care. This part of her story is so important because it really solidified that shift. She wasn't just an actress commenting on issues anymore. She was using her entire platform as a tool for political mobilization.
Let's get specific about the trigger event and the timeline because the sources lay it out very clearly. The catalyst was May 14th, 2019. This was right after the Alabama legislature passed that extremely restrictive anti-abortion bill, House Bill 314, the Human Life Protection Act. In the immediate aftermath of that, Phillips just exploded into action, becoming this leading voice urging women to share their own abortion stories to fight back against that kind of legislation.
And she leveraged her platform incredibly effectively. On Twitter, where she had, 370,000 followers at the time, a big reach. She picked up the hashtag #YouKnowMe. Now, that hashtag had apparently been around since February of that year, sort of a general awareness thing. But on May 14th, she really weaponized it. She gave it this urgent, specific, and deeply personal call to action, explicitly aimed at breaking the silence and stigma surrounding abortion.
Yeah, her tweet was really direct and it used that statistic very powerfully. She wrote, 1 in 4 women have had an abortion. Many people think they don't know someone who has, but #YouKnowMe. And then the call to action. So let's do this. If you are also the 1 in 4, let's share it and start to end the shame. It was a clear attempt to shift the debate from abstract political talk to lived, personal experience, building solidarity through shared truth.
And what made that call resonate so strongly is that she wasn't just asking others to share. She just put her own story out there. Just the week before this tweet, she revealed on her own talk show, Busy Tonight, that she herself had an abortion when she was 15 years old. So she placed her own vulnerable teenage experience right at the heart of this political firestorm she was now leading. It gave the #YouKnowMe movement an immediate recognizable face and voice.
This activism wasn't just online either. It went all the way to the government. The sources confirm that on June 4th, 2019, just a few weeks later, she actually testified before the House Judiciary Committee. She was there specifically arguing against these restrictive laws, defending the right to access abortion clinics.
And when we discuss this, it's really important to state clearly, we're reporting on the factual events and her direct statements as presented in the source material, maintaining impartiality on the political issue itself. Her core argument, summed up in a key quote from that testimony, really captured her whole approach, linking personal bodily choice directly to fundamental American ideals.
That quote was powerful. She said, "I am a human being that deserves autonomy in this country that calls itself free. And choices that a human being makes about their own bodies should not be legislated by strangers who can't possibly know or understand each individual's circumstances or beliefs."
You see how that connects everything. The core argument is about personal freedom, individual circumstances. By sharing her own deeply personal story, the specifics of being 15 and needing an abortion, she forced the conversation away from just being theoretical or political. She made people confront the actual human reality behind that 1 in 4 statistic she amplified.
And that connects right back to what you said earlier about the James Franco story in her book. It's the same strategy, isn't it? Using a specific personal, maybe even painful detail to illuminate a much larger point about autonomy, about power dynamics, about who gets to make decisions, whether it's on a film set or in a state legislature. Her public identity now feels completely fused with this willingness to share, to critique, and to mobilize others.
So, stepping back and looking at this whole journey laid out in the deep dive, it's really a remarkable and definitely not a straight line career arc. We started with those iconic fictional characters. People knew her as Kim Kelly, this tough, angry kid, Lori Keller, this ray of sunshine and absurdity. But the real narrative here, the core of this deep dive, is that huge, deliberate shift where she moved from being primarily known for playing other people to being known just as much, maybe even more so, for being herself. For her own voice.
Yeah, her entire public brand now feels built on that idea, this strategic, purposeful overshare, maybe. Whether it was the Franco incident used to talk about misogyny, or her abortion story fueling the #YouKnowMe movement, or talking openly about her ADHD diagnosis. That willingness to put vulnerable personal details out there, it's become the absolute hallmark of her career now. And it's that ability to connect the personal dots to these bigger social or political issues that makes her so, I don't know, uniquely resonant today.
And underlying all that sharing is that incredible professional resilience we kept seeing. I mean, navigating that Busy Tonight cancellation on the same day as a major nomination, that takes something. Or steering Girls Famosa successfully from one streamer to another. She's really shown this ability to adapt to make sure that her core asset, which is essentially her personality, her voice always finds a place to land, even when the platforms themselves are shaky.
And that adaptation involves real choices, doesn't it? She chose to use her voice in ways that were guaranteed to attract controversy, political pushback, maybe even professional risk. But you could argue those exact same choices are what built this incredibly loyal, engaged audience around her specific brand of authenticity.
Absolutely. So maybe the final thought we can leave you, the listener, with is this. We've traced this career marked by both, serious resilience and some really calculated risks. How does it change things when an actor, or any public figure really, deliberately steps into these huge, often polarizing public debates, defending rights, challenging norms, using their platform in that way? Does it fundamentally alter the shape, the longevity, the complexity of their career? And what does Busy Phillips's continued success, her constant reinvention, tell us about what we value now in public figures? How much weight do we give that authentic, sometimes messy, completely unapologetic voice in the entertainment world today? Something to think about.